Hi there, film lovers. Welcome back to another review where I dive deep into, this time, an Indian movie. Today, I'm covering the 2025 Malayalam sports film called Alappuzha Gymkhana, directed by Khalid Rahman. This film follows a group of students who, after failing their exams, attempt to enter college through sports quotas by taking up boxing. In this film, they somehow manage to stumble through district level competitions, but then face the harsh reality of higher level tournaments. It does sound like an underdog story with potential, right? Well, let's break down if this boxing drama delivers a knockout or ends up in the canvas. Let's start with the plot, or rather, what little there is to it. If you're worried about spoilers, don't be. There is hardly anything to spoil here. This film essentially follows our protagonist from one boxing match to another with very little narrative substance in between. The premise is simple. Students need sports quotas to get into college, they chose boxing, they train a bit, and suddenly they're competing. But beyond this basic setup, the story doesn't actually go anywhere meaningful. It is just a series of boxing matches strung together without any compelling narrative arc. What it could have been an interesting exploration of academic pressure, alternative paths to success, or even just a solid sports drama, instead just becomes a showcase for boxing scenes that, ironically, become tedious through the sheer abundance of them. Let me focus on that for a bit, because as I said, ironically, for a boxing film, Alappuzha Gymkhana suffers from boxing overload. The matches and the training sequences take up so much screen time that they become repetitive and lose their impact. Now, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a good sports sequence as much as anyone. But when action scenes exist purely for their own sake, rather than advancing the plot or revealing character, they become just hollow spectacle. Yes, a boxing film should have boxing, of course, but it also needs something more to sustain the viewer's interest. If I wanted to see boxing with no narrative context or no story behind, I would just simply watch an actual boxing match. But at least I know the stakes are real. Now, character development in Alappuzha Gymkhana is practically non-existent. Our protagonists don't grow as people. They simply become better at boxing. And even that transformation is very questionable. The film is asking us to believe that after running a few laps and practicing some basic punches for a couple of months, these lads transform into proficient boxers capable of competing at advanced levels. I understand the need for cinematic condensation, a movie should be short, but even this stretches the credibility beyond the breaking point. Even in a sports film, we need to see the hard work, we need to see the failures, the persistence that makes the eventual success meaningful. Now, in terms of some other characters, like for example the female characters, I think they deserve a special mention, specifically for how underutilized they are. They feel somehow shoehorned into the narrative with no clear purpose other than seems to take a diversity box. Listen, we have women in our movie, right? Because they are not given any meaningful storylines, agency, or even personality traits beyond the relation to the male characters in the movie. Now, let me give credit where it's due. The cinematography in Alappuzha Gymkhana is actually quite good. The boxing sequences are filmed with energy and dynamism. The camera work during these scenes shows technical skill with movements that capture the intensity and physicality of the sport. However, while the camera work is excellent, the music choices are a bit bewildering at some times. The background score often feels overwrought, emphasizing emotions that the story really hasn't earned. The musical interludes that punctuate the film feel like just attempts to inject energy into a sluggish narrative, rather than organic parts of the storytelling. There is another positive aspect of Alappuzha Gymkhana, and I think it's one that it's worth highlighting, and that is the fresh faces in the cast. Malayalam cinema often relies on established stars, but Alappuzha Gymkhana showcases a little bit of new talent. These actors do their best with the material they're given, I'm pretty sure. And there is potential certainly visible in their performance, even if the script doesn't give them too much opportunity to demonstrate range or depth of emotions. I cannot say that about the movie though. Is Alappuzha Gymkhana a drama, a comedy, a sports film? I think it is difficult to tell, as even the movie seems unsure of its own identity. There are some attempts at humor that sometimes just fall flat. There are dramatic moments that lack emotional resonance, and sports sequences that, while visually impressive, don't build up to a satisfying conclusion. This general confusion contributes to the overall sense that the film lacks focus and clear vision. Let me share with you my final thoughts. Alappuzha Gymkhana feels like a missed opportunity. It has the technical components to be a good film, competent cinematography, fresh actors, and a premise with potential, but squanders these assets on a wafer-thin plot and underdeveloped characters. It is a film that prioritizes style over substance, action over narrative, and spectacle over character. It is just a meh film where people fight for no apparent reason, and what we're left with is a collection of boxing scenes rather than a proper film. A visual exercise that seems designed to stimulate the audience just enough to prevent them from questioning the lack of substance in the movie. It really feels like just watching a highlight reel rather than a complete movie, leaving you with the distinct impression that something vital is missing. If it isn't obvious by now, my recommendation is to skip Alappuzha Gymkhana altogether. If you're interested in boxing, you better serve by watching an actual boxing match. If you're looking for a sports drama, there are countless and better examples in Indian cinema and beyond. This film, unfortunately, is all punch but no purpose. A technical exercise that forgot to include heart, story, and meaningful character journeys. And that's it for today's review. I hope I didn't sound too negative, but I don't think Alappuzha Gymkhana is worth your time. If you think I'm being too harsh, just let me know your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, keep watching movies. See you next time.